regarding the Surah 25.
Yeah.
So differences were that disturbing that Umar wanted to grab Hisham or Hisham wanted to grab Umar. So that those differences were pretty disturbing. And Muhammad said, all right to the both of them. Okay?
Yeah.
Can you just provide book for me that I can see what were the differences with the Umar side or with the Hisham side? I can compare that with the Hafs version. Plus, I think it's helpful to remember Uthman discredited all those 7 different ways. When Muhammad said, Allah revealed the Quran to me in 7 different ways, Uthman discredited them and then made one perfect one. So all those qira'ats, all those differences appears after Uthman. Can you comment on that?
I forgot about that, man.
Also,
That's what you need Arabs.
how can you be sure actually what Muhammad recited when you look at all those differences? Because, for example, Hafs Quran goes back to the narration when you kind of look chains. It goes to the Ubay bin Ka'b in that list. Okay. But we know that in the Islamic tradition, as Ubay bin Ka'b reciting the certain surahs, Muhammad steps in and then that different recitation caused doubt to Ubay bin Ka'b. He has doubt in his faith that Muhammad.
And then he pointed at him in his heart, his chest.
Chest, and then it caused.
Then the doubt left him.
Yeah, it struck in his chest.
Yes.
Yet also again, same Islamic tradition tells us Muhammad didn't remember the certain part of the Quran. Yet he prays for people to remind that. So looking at all those messed up Islamic tradition, how can you be confident that the Quran you are reading, of course, if you can provide me the 7 different verses of the Surah 25, and also for the, I think, Surah 10, the Ubay bin Ka'b heard the Surah. If you provide those different surahs, we can see what are the differences. Here's the problem. Of course, you can look at the Bible and then you can even give a quotation from the scholars. They are talking about there are the variations. Reason for that because throughout centuries as a Christians, we've been open about it and we are talking about it. You just grab my Bible, there is a footnote says, oh, watch out, this is not in some of the earliest manuscripts. But why I cannot find the Quran which tells me, oh, watch out, Surah 33 verse 6 and Surah 33 verse 40 is different, and then it changed the theological differences. Why I cannot find this? Why you are not open about those things?
Thanks very much. Yeah, that's good. No, I'm happy. The questions are fair. Actually,
sorry, just one.
Yes.
Can we do time to time?
You don't need time to
No. Can we do time to time?
It's up to you.
Okay, let's do time to time. 5 minutes, 5 minutes?
3 minutes is good. Make it a bit shorter.
Can you do that?
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, go for it.
Now, there's a few issues. I'm happy that you've done your research. You've obviously tried to do your research. There's a few mistakes that you made. One of the mistakes that you made is that you said that Uthman ibn Affan, he put all the qira'ahs in one. Is that what you said, yeah?
I didn't say Quran.
What did you say?
I said different ways. So Quran is revealed in 7 different ways. Quran is revealed in 7 different ways. Uthman made it to the one way. So
Okay.
I could say Ahruf, but I know Islamic traditions disagree with what is Ahruf
Alright, cool. So let me
Quran
just...
is different from the Ahruf.
Okay, good. So here, the question is, what is the difference between the ahruf and the qira'ah?
That's not my question.
No, but this is not my time. Can I say what I want? Can we start again?
I'll give you more time.
Alright. Basically, what I was going to say was as follows, yeah? The qira'at al-ashar, the 10 mutawatir, authentically transmitted qira'at of the Quran, all of them, we believe, have a mutawatir chain, which means this chain is mass transmitted by a plethora of different individuals at every level, yeah? Now, you said, how comes, you said in chapter 25, for example, can you find me the 7 different ways that it was recited? That's not how the ahruf works. Because what you're presupposing is that in every verse of the Quran, there has to be 7 different transmissions or certain differences, yeah? That's not what the thesis is. No one has ever said that. For example, Surah Al-Fatiha, chapter 1 of the Quran, all of Surah Al-Fatiha is the same among all 10 Qur'an, except for one word, which is Malik. So in other words, there's one difference with one word, which is expressed in 10 different qira'at. So 6 of those qira'at say Malik, and 4 of them say Malik. So from that perspective, that's one harf that's being transmitted over the span of 10 different things. I'm really happy that you, and I actually commend you for coming forward and saying that as Christians you admit basically in your Bible that there are footnotes that say that this is not in the earliest manuscripts and all these things. I'm very, very happy with that. I think now it's high time that we get over this hurdle and we just be open about it. I'm happy that you said that. I'm very grateful to you.
He's getting 20 seconds more.
Now, my contention is that this is problematic. Not because there's variants, but because those variants are not authenticated by Jesus Christ and therefore not by God. So therefore you have human tampering in the Bible. This is what you have to prove from the Quranic perspective. Because all of the variants that you're finding, the stylistic variants, are authenticated by the Prophet by way of mass transmission. Not only transmission and chain, but mass transmission. And we can prove that with great ease. So here the point is, you asked about how comes the Quran that you have doesn't have within it that more than one way of being able to pronounce the different Quran is absolutely false. There is, like for example, the Hafs Quran that you pick up now, it can facilitate at least 3 different qira'at, and that's why you have some words that have other 2 ways of being able to be pronounced. So, salat is actually spelled salawat. Salawat. Anyways, I'm not going to go into a long discussion.
Time, yeah? Sorry.
So we do have that.
You don't
Really?
have that? So,
Do you want this, do you want a mic?
can you just give me the dates when the 10 qira'ats have been officialized? Can you give me that date and then I'll move forward?
All of the qira'at have been official from the beginning.
Okay, so can you please provide something for me that I can see Al-Bazi's Quran is officialized in time of Muhammad? You've got nothing.
Al-Bazi.
You've got nothing for that.
So is that a question you want me to answer?
That was the question, so when your time comes,
Okay.
you will answer that. So, your 10 qira'ats have been officialized. Actually, not in the time of Muhammad. Let me give you the date for that.
Yeah, okay.
And dates are pretty late for those things. It's a bit strange, but it's pretty late for that. So your 10 qira'ats have been officialized in 1397. 1397, so 14th centuries, end of 14th centuries. I'll tell you the name, and I'm sure you already know that. So in 935, you had 7 readings, Ibn Mujahid, and in 1397, Ibn al-Jizri added 3 more Qurans, and then you can read that from the Suyuti. He tells you all those things. Plus that, when you go back, actually you see in 839, there are 25 different Arabic Qurans. Someone gathered. In 900s, there are 50 different Arabic Qurans people are gathered. So my question was to you, can you just please...
Who's ever said this?
My question to you was, can you please provide what were those differences in this regarding the Surah 25, that we can see that. So, because my book has footnote, you can talk about the John chapter 7, John chapter 8, but your Quran doesn't have footnote regarding the Surah 25, what was Hashim recited, what was Umar recited, Hisham, what was Umar recited. So you do not have that, you don't know that. You have to have faith that Uthman was good enough to make that decision. Remember, Uthman brought it to the one dialect. Yet, as I commented, and then you didn't even come back to me, when you look at the chain of the Hafs Quran, Ubay bin Ka'b is in that chain, yet Ubay bin Ka'b is in that chain, yet we know Hafs Quran is there. Is there, sir?
30 seconds.
I would love you to give me your sources that Ubay bin Ka'b is not there. I would love you to give me the source. How can you be sure Ibn Masud's Quran and Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran was same? As we know, according to Islamic tradition, there were disagreements and their Quran was different. Yet today, because you fail to be open about it, can you please comment on the Surah 33 verse 6 and Surah 33 verse 40, which changed the theological of the meaning of the sentence for 0? And my Quran doesn't have those footnotes because you haven't been opening about it.
Okay. So the first thing you said was true. I mean, you have to trust Uthman. But it wasn't just Uthman. It was Uthman and the people that are around him. As you know, I'm sure you do know, because you've done a lot of work into this. They done a lajna, which means a commission. So it was Uthman, Zayd ibn Thabit, Ibn Mas'ud was there, who she mentioned himself, who in the beginning, is true, had an understanding that 2 surahs were not part of the Quran. Then he changed his mind afterwards, when he realized that everyone was narrating the Quran with Falaq and Nas. The point is here, that the evidences that you provided are a mix of academic arguments with falsehoods. Like, for example, when you were speaking for a while, you said that there's 50 different Qur'ans or something like this. I mean, what's your source for that? Then you said that Ubay ibn Ka'b was part of the...
Let me give my source and then you can...
No, in your time. Ubay ibn Ka'b, you said he was part of the chain. And he said he was part of the chain of Hafs, which is not true. Because the chain is exactly that Hafs narrated upon Asim, who narrated upon Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, who related upon Uthman ibn Affan, who related Allah. And Abu Ubay ibn Ka'b is not there at all. So here,
give me the names again?
but hold on. So that's 2 points. The third point you've made is about
The chains you just said.
Sorry?
The chain you just said.
time. No, but it's time.
Yeah, I'll give you more time.
That's point number 2.
Don't worry.
Point number three. What you said? What is the evidence of that as a reference? You can go to Tabaqat al-Qurra, which is written by Ibn al-Jazari himself, who's someone you quoted yourself. And then you had the audacity to say that, I'm sorry, I don't mean this in a rude way, but you had the kind of academic audacity to claim that the Qur'at were only known at the time of Ibn al-Jazari, where he himself in Tayyibat al-Nashr, which is a book he wrote, he said that these existed, the Qur'at existed before. He formalized them as with a Shatibi, and he put it into poetic form and book form so that everyone understands. But this is the difference between formalizing something so that everyone understands it, and putting it into existence himself, which is of course 2 completely different things. Do you get me? That's 2 things. Now, I am happy that you've admitted in this discussion, because it's quite a fruitful discussion. She's admitted that the Bible has footnotes in it which say that this part is in the manuscript, this part is not in the manuscript. And therefore there's been human involvement in the biblical text. She's open about that. I'm saying this is unacceptable. Why? Because you don't have anything going back to Jesus with those variants. We have everything in terms of our stylistic variants. We have going back to the Prophet Muhammad, who authenticated it through chain of narration, who had it authenticated by Allah. So everything that you're reciting today, whether it's Hafs and Asim, or Warsh and Nafi', or whatever is Al-Badzi, or whatever you want, or Ibn Amir, or Ibn Amr, or Al-Sa'i, or Hamza, or any of those qira'at, any of those individuals, they have a chain going back to the Prophet. So we would call that the Quran. So the issue here is not. The issue here is that you're unable to do the same thing with the Quran, with the Bible. We have a preserved Quran, but you don't have a preserved Bible.
I'll give you the chains for the Hafs, and you can correct yourself on that. So, Hafs narration goes. First of all, I'll give you the dates for Hafs. It's 800. So, Abu Bakr Asim ibn Abi al-Majid al-Asadi al-Kufi. Text from Abu Abdurrahman, Abu Allah ibn Habib al-Sumi. Takes it from the Uthman bin Affan. Takes it from the Ali bin Ali Tabab. Takes it from the Zayd bin Thabit and Ubay bin Ka'b. It's in that narration. It's in that narration, sir. So I would like, you had to listen to that because you didn't give me references for that. I'll read it again, okay? Hafs ibn Sulaiman from Abu Bakr Asim ibn Abi al-Najid al-Asir al-Kufi, Abi Abdurrahman, Abdullah Allah ibn Habib al-Sulami, Uthman bin Affan, Ali ibn al-Tabi, and Zayd bin Thabit, and Usay bin Ka'b. Okay? And they take from the Muhammad. They take from the Muhammad.
Where's Ubay ibn Ka'b?
So,
you said Ubay ibn Ka'b was in the chain.
Yeah,
yes, I did.
That was the one.
I did read it. Uthman ibn Affan and Ali ibn Ali Tabit and Zayd bin Thabit and Ubay bin Ka'b.
The last one. The last one is
comes from that. So it's there.
So what
I'll
was
give
the-
you.
what was the
I'll
point
give.
you made?
It's my turn, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just correct you on that. And while people are disagreeing with one another, Masood and Kaab disagreeing, and then also we read from the tradition they didn't like Zayd bin Thabit. How can you trust that chain? Because you've got the names, it doesn't make that much sense. Plus, can you please provide for me written version of the Quran
Yeah.
from Nasar ibn Asan in, sorry, that's different
Sorry,
chain.
sorry?
Sorry, that was different
That's
chain. Can you please provide for me Abu Abdurrahman Abdullah ibn Habib al-Sulmi's
Sulami.
Quran
Yeah.
that I can compare with the Hafs Quran? Also, can you please provide for me Al-Qab's Quran, Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran, so I can compare them, since you don't have the Quran from that time.
Okay.
And let me give you the dates again regarding the chains for the not chains for the dates which you didn't remember. So I know information regarding the 25 different Qurans that
25 or 26.
existed in the I'll give you the name so you can read it from the Abu Ubayd al-Qasim ibn Salam. He's dated 829. He gathered 25 different Qurans. And then you can go back to the Shia sources. They are disagreeing with one another, but I'm
Shia,
not going to
come on.
go to that.
Don't talk to me about Shia.
And then you
That's
can
a different
you
conversation.
can look at the Sunni sources, and then you can see in
Time.
Okay. Do you want to continue? No, let her finish. Let her finish, please.
And then in 912, there are 50 different Qurans
And there's-
talking about Taruk al-Quran, page 39. And then again, we look at the Ibn Sunabidan, 939. They are talking about the lots of different Qurans.
Okay,
And
thank
then he talks about he used.
I gave her- I gave her- I gave her a
Quran.
bone, she took the whole
So
meat.
your 10 reading,
Go ahead,
your 10 reading
do you
has
wanna-
been from 25 to 50 to 10 reading
Okay.
came down in 1397.
Would you like me to respond to that? Thank you very much. No, it's good. There's a difference between vertical chains and horizontal ones, yeah? So the vertical chain that we've narrated is, because you mentioned Asim himself, so Asim and Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami and Uthman al-Affan and these are 4 individuals, yeah? Obviously there's going to be people horizontally. Now the point you ask is, how comes you have variants? Give me Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami's Quran. This is a very silly thing to say. Why? Because all of them relied upon the Uthmani manuscript, as you know, yeah? As we all do. In fact, anyone who studies this fan, or what do you call it, this discipline, this science, will know that everything goes back to the Uthmani Musahif. There are 4, some say 6, Uthmani Musahif that was sent to Bahrain, to Yemen, to Sham, to Egypt, not to Egypt, to Medina, sorry, and one to Kufa. There's a difference of opinion. These Masahif are literally the Uthmani Masahif, which were, or the Qurans, the Kutub, which were authenticated by Uthman and his Lajna. The question of, okay, how comes Ubay ibn Ka'b and Ibn Mas'ud, they had a difference of opinion, it's true. You can find that in Bukhari, that in the beginning, Ubay ibn Ka'b thought there was 2 additional surahs, and Ibn Mas'ud, he thought Falaq and Nas were not part of the Quran. Both of those individuals detracted the earlier statements. And that can be found in the fact that both of those individuals were part of the Lajna, or the commission, that was commissioned by Uthman ibn Affan, yes, at his time. So, the question of where is the Quran of Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami is the same one as the one Uthman used. So that's why all of the Masahif of Uthman, all of the Kutub of Uthman, are the ones we rely upon as Muslims. Your job is to show that there has been interpolation in those Masahif, and that there's been interpolation within the chain. Because when you mention, okay, there's 50 different, I don't even know what source it is, but let's just say for the argument's sake, no problem, I can't remember what source you used. But let me tell you something that Ibn al-Jazari, because he mentioned him himself. She mentioned Ibn al-Jazari. If you read his books, Tariq al-Nashr, which is a seminal work, and obviously he's one of the major scholars of Islam in this regard, he says about this that something will not be registered as Quran unless it has 3 different things. Number 1, it has to be in compliance with the Uthmani script. Number 2, it has to be compliant with the Arabic language. And number 3, it has to have a chain of narration. And لابد أن يكون مشهورا. He says it's got to be at least mashhur, or we call it mutawatir, which means it has to have a mass transmission. So anything now that comes about, that you bring about, say, hey, this is a Quran. If you excavate any Quran, which is different to the one we have now, and it's different, yeah? Even if it comes at the time of Uthman, even if it comes after him, we'll say, if it doesn't meet those 3 conditions, you can't even call it anything. This is not
What
Quran.
is the date for those conditions?
Pardon?
What is the date for those conditions?
He wrote it. That's in
What
his book.
is the date?
I don't understand what you mean by is the date. Anyway,
What is the date?
Do you mind if I continue? Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off. These are questions about peripheral issues. I'm saying that a Quran is that which meets those three conditions. And that's why that Qira'at al-Ashar, the 10 authentically transmitted Qira'at, these meet all the transmissions. There are what you call shawad. There are other ones, shared Qira'at, that don't meet those three conditions. Therefore, we don't even consider them Qur'ans. We don't consider them Qur'ans. So anything else you bring is not going to be...
So, I think it's been second term, you still haven't responded to my question regarding what's happening in Surah 33. I would really appreciate your answer on that.
Yeah.
And can you please provide the dates for me when they decided those conditions? Is the date for those conditions are 935 or is date for those conditions are 1397? Depend what do you believe, how many qirats, official qirats are there. So aren't those dates too late for those things to be arranged and practiced? I am saddened that you cannot provide anything for me from the name I give it to you, which was from the Hafs narration. I guess you cannot provide anything for me for Al-Bazi or for Hatun. So, as the written form, I can confirm that. Because I don't think you can...
I don't understand.
Can you please provide me written forms of the name I give it to you from the chain of the Hafs? That I can compare, that is the chain actually, it is like transmitted correctly. Because today, according to tradition, I've got a Quran which takes back me to Hafs, but it doesn't take me back to Uthman or to Muhammad because you've got nothing written down from that I can compare. And if it is written down, I would appreciate to see that. So, my question still stands. I would love you to provide information for me regarding the Surah 33. I would love you to provide information for me regarding the written version of the Qur'ans. And as I give you the names, we see from those narrations, those people are disagreeing with one another. So even you've got them, I've got the Quran here. It doesn't tell me, oh, by the way, Ibn Masud's Quran has this, or Ibn Ka'b's Quran has this.
That's not what I've been saying.
Yeah, it doesn't provide those informations for me. I would appreciate if you provide those things for us. And every Muslims, when they look at the Quran, they stop saying, oh, Quran is perfectly preserved, there is no variances. And I show you some of the variations. There are approximately 45,339 of them. I'm just going to show you a couple of things, and I would love you to show me which one goes to the Muhammad. And I would love you to kind of confirm that with the written sources, which goes back to the Muhammad. I'm not making a claim that, for example, Warsh Quran or Qalun Quran teaches different Islam. I'm not saying, oh, they teach there is different prophet, or they teach there is a different God.
Okay,
but I'm making a point. There are lots of variations. Yet my Quran I'm reading doesn't speak about it, and Muslims are claiming Quran has been perfectly preserved dot to dot. Can you please unpack that for me?
Yeah, okay, so let's start with the first thing you told me to answer, which is chapter 33 verse 6, where it says, where it talks about the adopted sons. It talks about the adopted sons. والله يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل. This verse, yeah? والله يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل. This verse is the ending of the verse, where it talks about the adopted sons. And obviously chapter 33 verse number 40 is the famous one. ما كان محمد الآباء أحد رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين وخاتم النبيين. And obviously in the 10 qira'as, there's two different ways of reciting that. It's Khatam and Khatim, which is he's the seal of the Prophet and he's the final Prophet. So these are the two examples you've given me. The Qira'at al-Ashar, of the Qira'at al-Ashar, it's not the case that you have 10 different variants, just to make this point very clear. You have two different variances distributed over the 10 variants, or the 10 Qira'at. So the two variants are Khatam and Khatim. In the case of chapter 33 verse 40. Khatam means the seal of the prophets. Khatam means the final prophet. Now, first of all, we would say there's no contradiction in those things. Number two, we would say, like for example, Hafs is Khatam, Qalun is Khatim, Warsh is Khatim, Hamza is Khatam, Kisai is Khatam. Do you get me? So it depends on which qira'ah you're reading. What we say is that the Prophet recited it like this, and the Prophet recited it like that. And we have chains that go back to both of those things. Did you get it? Okay, hopefully you understand it now, because it is quite straightforward to understand. You have selected verses where it can be recited in two different ways. The problem would be if in those mutawatir qira'ahs you could find, for example, contradiction. If you say that there's a contradiction by saying that the Prophet is the final Prophet and the seal of the Prophet, that would be a problem. But there is no contradiction in that. Why would there be a contradiction in that? The second thing you said, you mentioned Al-Bazzi for some strange reason. Okay, and he had two rawis, Qumbul, one of the rawis, and the other one. So Abu Dhakwan, I think, maybe I'm completely losing my mind here. But with Al-Bazzi, he relied upon one of the Masahib of Uthman. See, here you have to understand that the Masahib of Uthman are more than one. There are at least 4 and up to 7. Those Masahib or those Kutub of Uthman, those Qira'at, that's why you'll find, for example, if you pick up a Warsh Qira'ah Qur'an, you'll find some wells, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ. It's not there. In the Hafs one is there. Okay, so if you want to know everything about it, you have to know the Qira'at. Where are the Qira'at mentioned? They're mentioned in all the classical exegeses. Now, why is it not translated? I agree with you, actually. There should be some footnotes that say it could be read like this, sometimes it could be read like that. In fact, I had this conversation with one of the translators of the Quran, myself, and we agreed that this is a long-term project, that we should introduce this, where you should have it. But in Arabic, it's definitely there. In most, if not all of the tafsir, as you can see here, it tells you all the different variant readings. There's a website called nquran.com. It's not an industrial secret. It's nquran.com. You'll find that it shows you all the awjuh al-ikhtilafat.
Time.
And so this is, I don't know where we're going here.
Surah 33 verse 6 reads it. The Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and their wives are their mothers. Blood relations among each other have closer personal ties. In the declare of Allah, then believers and muhajirs, nevertheless do you what is just to your closest friends, such is writing of the declare. In some Qur'ans, like Ubay bin Ka'b, occur also words called he is a father of them, which implies his spiritual relationship and connection with the words, and his wives are their mothers. This is spiritual fatherhood with the constructed, pointed with the reputation of the Buddha superstition of calling any like Zayd ibn Hatran by the appellation Zayd ibn Muhammad. Such an application is really disrespectful to Prophet. Reason for that is Surah 33 verse 14. So, you didn't respond to my questions regarding the Surah 33 verse 6.
Because you put the Quran on the floor. But I was just saying, don't worry, because it's English.
It's a book. I don't worship a book. So
that's all right.
You failed to give me the dates regarding when the 10 Qur'ans have been officialized, and what is your sources which takes back to the Muhammad? It has been happened way after Muhammad. They are not the Ahrufs, they are the Qur'ans. So I would love you to give me the dates and then explain what happened from 632 to 1400s that they decided and then picked those 10 Qur'ans. Okay? I would love to know that. And also I would love to know what was the source that they would know who were the official all those Qur'ans. I guess you are apologizing regarding you got the Ubay bin Ka'b is wrong. So I would love you to also explain it to me a little bit regarding, as Ubay bin Ka'b and Ibn Masud are disagreeing with the Qur'ans, why I cannot find their versions in the Qur'ans people are reading. Only 18, let me be generous, 20% of the world speaks Arabic, understands Arabic, plus some of the Muslim missionaries. 80% of Muslims don't understand Arabic. They just recited it. Why you are not being helpful to them and sharing those informations with them? I would love to know that.
I think that's what we're trying to do here. That's what we're doing.
Here is the
You've got what, 8 seconds left?
Yeah.
How many seconds?
5 seconds.
I've got some dates regarding the Qur'ans.
Okay, next time. You can do it next time. I did give her like, sometimes I give them, but then they just took like half a minute. Okay, your point about a waving cap and Ibn Mas'ud, both of them had different understanding of what constituted the Quran. The waving cap believed in two other dua that he thought was part of the Quran. Ibn Mas'ud had Falaq al-Nas, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, chapter 113, chapter 114 of the Quran, not as part of the corpus. They both retracted that. Okay, but you have to understand, these guys were around at the time of the Prophet Muhammad. When did they retract that? They retract that because we know they were part of the Lajna. They were part of the commission that Uthman put forward. So they both retracted it. They said, okay, this was something we thought, and then now we understand differently. So the idea is, where is the Ubay bin Ka'b Quran? There is no such Quran. It doesn't exist. Do you get it? Where is the Ibn Mas'ud Quran? There is no such Quran. It just simply doesn't exist. They agreed with Uthman on his rendering of the Quran. And the only way you can disprove that is by showing that either of those two men, or both of those two men, were not present or not alive at that time. And these were the highest of Quranic scholars. They would have been summoned by this man, by Uthman al-Affan, in order to take shura from him, and this is well known. So this is the first point. So the second point is that you have to understand here the 10 qira'at, because you keep referring to them as different Qur'ans, which is once again very disingenuous. I'm saying these are called qira'at, which means stylistic readings, yeah? It's one book, you have one book, one codified entrenched document, which can be read in certain circumstances in more than one way. So for example, the word Malik now, if you bring out any mushaf, if you would like to bring out any mushaf, you will see that even in the Hafs qira'ah of the Quran, you will see that it says Malik, it says Malik, it says Malik. Mim, Lam, and Kaf. It says Malik, which means King of the Day of Judgment. But then you have Idkhal Alif al-Khanjariyah. Alif al-Khanjariyah is a small little alif, so that if someone wanted to read it Malik, they can. So even within one, you're asking about footnotes, it's more ingenious than footnote. Because you have here one lexical phrase which facilitates two different readings. Where that is not possible, that there is necessarily the case that we have not only footnotes, but a whole different text. That's why we have a different stylistic reading, for example, for Warsh, where you have different wells, which means and it's a conjunction in Arabic language. So here, because you could have put well in brackets, but because it's more befitting for you to read it as a continuous prose, they made a completely different qira'ah for it. So you can go to a Moroccan masjid and they read it in Warsh. You go to a Libyan masjid, they read it in Khalun. All of those different qira'at, they go back to one source, and this is our point. Unless you can refute this point that it goes back to the Prophet, then you really haven't got any case.
Yeah.
So you said there is no, you didn't respond to Surah 33. I'm still waiting to respond to that one.
What was the difference?
You said there is no Quran called Ibn Masud's Quran or Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran. Can you just tell me what is Ibn Shuhanabu in 939 talking about, that he's using the Ibn Masud's Quran and Ubay's Quran? Can you also please explain it to me? Can you also please explain to me why Ibn Masud even didn't want to give his Quran? So even they were disagreeing with the certain surahs. Can you please tell me, did Muhammad believe Surah Fatiha, Surah 113, Surah 114, and Surah 115, 116 was the part of the Quran or not? Because there is some questions regarding the Muhammad's memory in that case. And I would love you to please provide for me written forms of what, for example, Zakwan got it from Muhammad, and what Hisham got it from Muhammad, and why the written form of those Qurans are different. I'm not talking about the Malik versus Malik. I'm talking about innocent creatures, for example. I'm going to give you some examples. So let me give you a couple of examples which hopefully will help you. Sorry, I'm just going to find the list for you.
And this is the Usmanic font.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples. For example, Surah 98 verse 6. Creation versus innocent. They are different things. Surah 72 verse 20. One of them is say, other one is he said.
Yeah, okay.
Surah 49 verse 6. So verify it versus
تثبت وتبين. Yeah. Well known.
he stood firmly.
Versus what, sorry?
He stood firmly.
No, that's not true.
Can you
Yeah,
46 Surah 46 verses 15, doing good things versus beauty. Surah
Which one was
43
that? Which one was that?
46 15.
إحسانا
Surah 43 verse 24.
Which one?
43 verse 19.
Yeah.
Slaves versus in the presence or near. So
43 verses.
I'm not talking about the different citations. I'm talking about different writing,
Yeah, I know which one she's talking.
different writing skills. And I would love you to tell me which one goes to the Muhammad.
Oh, sorry, you ran over a bit. Okay, so let's go through the ones that she said, right? So, by the way, chapter 33, verse 6, within Hafs can be read in two different ways. You can have Wallahu yahdi, what's it? وهو يهدي السبيل and sabila. You can say it in two different ways, right? It doesn't make any difference to the translation. But that's even mentioned in the footnotes of the Hafs Quran. In the back, if you look at the emblems and whatnot, it doesn't make a difference. That's one. Point number two, chapter number 98, verse 6, as she says, she translated bari'ah as, what is it? Innocence. Which doesn't mean that. And she translated, which one was it?
So Baria.
No, she has the 98.6, then she had what? Was that one you had?
You didn't listen?
Huh?
Don't drop your phone.
No, she had 49.6. Tabayyanu tathabatu, he stood firm, which is not correct. Tabayyanu means double check it. Tathabatu means double check it. The only difference is, tabayyanu means make sure from that person. Tathabatu, when you get the news, make sure from that person. So it's such a nuanced difference. It's almost the same thing completely. And how could it be the two things? One lexical phrase in this situation could have facilitated the two different letters. Because the ba and the ya and the noon and the tha, tathabatu, and the ba, yeah, that could be, it's all like the same lexical phrase that you can attach dots into it. So in other words, the Uthmani Mus'haf, which at the beginning didn't have tanqeed, didn't have dots, could have facilitated both of the two readings, tathabatu and tabayyanu. Or in the case of Surah thing, Sabil Sabila, it's even, you've got a little circular oval
It's
thing.
got it can, it does. It's the same text.
Yeah.
Every single example you've said is the same text.
Same text. So really here, what we want to find out from you is because you keep telling us that, look, you said Ibn Mas'ud has a Mus'haf and Ubay ibn Ka'b has a Mus'haf. Agreed. They have Masahif. You have to understand that there's a difference between a Mus'haf and the Quran. What do I mean by that? Ibn Mas'ud's Mus'haf and Ibn Abbas's Mus'haf, this was his own personal thing. And according to the ijma' of the Muslims, the consensus of the Sahaba, they used to write their own tafsir in the Mus'haf. So in other words, you have, like, for example, in the Quranic verses, any verse, there's one verse, حافظوا على الصلوات الخمس. Yeah, this is actually a tafsir that Ibn Abbas put into the Mus'haf. Yeah, but you don't recite that in prayer. So this would not be registered as the Quran. We go back to what is the Quran. The Quran is that which meets three criteria. That which is in conformity with the Uthmanic script, is in conformity with the Qurayshi Arabic, and is in conformity and has mass transmission. So what you're referring to is a Mus'haf and not Quran. This, I agree with you, is not Quran. We don't accept it. We would never recite prayer like that. Because here, Ibn Mas'ud or Ibn Abbas, when he was reciting the Quran, he put his own take on it. He put his own take on it. So we wouldn't accept
Okay, so am I right to understand that you are just telling them the Quran Ibn Masud was reciting, or Ubay ibn Ka'b reciting with the minus surahs and edited surahs, has nothing to do with Muhammad? Is that correct? So, regarding the Surah 33 verse 6 and Surah 33 verse 40, it changed the theological difference. Is Muhammad biological father or spiritual father? Read it, both of them together, so it will help you on that context.
There's no difference about father there.
Ubay Ka'b's Quran was different.
What did it say?
So,
Sorry, I don't understand this point. Can you make it clearer? Because where's the father
Surah
difference?
33 verse 6, verses
What does it say about
Surah
father?
33, verse 14.
It doesn't say father there.
It does, it does. One of them talks about the spiritual father, other one is talking about the blood father. Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran was different.
It's talking about adopted son.
I would love you to get me that reference. It would be helpful if you just open your Quran, you will see what I mean, and compare Surah 33 verse 6 versus Surah 33 40, because there is a contradiction on that. So I understood that those different readings has nothing to do with Muhammad. They all go back to Uthman with his graphs for the Arabic alphabet. As you know, Arabic speaker, Arabic consonantal letters has 6 of them, only doesn't have dots. For you to understand the rest of 22 letters, you need a dots. So ya, ta, and nun are different from one another. When you look at the different Arabic Qurans, you can see that. And you can see in early Islamic century, people are disagreeing. You still fail to give me the date when those 10 readings become official readings. Because I gave you the dates and then I gave you the sources. You had 25, 50, and then it becomes 7, and it becomes 10. So I'll show you some examples, and then please explain why those differences are. So can you hold this for me?
By the way, it doesn't say fathers in that verse. I just made sure. Where does it say fathers? In verse 6, it doesn't say anything about father.
So in here, I've got some variations. There are 45,339 variations, and I would love Muslims to finally produce a critical edition of the Quran for us to go and see them. So it will be helpful. It will be
You have 30 seconds.
So here is my list, for example.
Let's go one by one. I've got them all.
Here is my list for you,
Finally.
so that we can go through them.
Every single one.
Surah 98, verse 6.
Khairul Bariyah.
Al-Bara.
Sorry, wait. Sorry. Shall we just leave the time? You're gonna go like this?
Let's establish point by point.
I mean, like,
She's got 5 seconds left. Give me the 3 minutes, and then we can do what we
No,
want.
I'll give it 15 seconds. But do
Okay,
you want to
give
do
it
it
15
within the time? Yeah, this one.
Yeah, it's my time, and then they will have.
You
they
got
will
20
respond
seconds.
to
Yeah,
that.
20 seconds, and then here we go.
I've got 20 more seconds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just answer my questions. I forgot my point.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you know, one thing I do want to commend you for today, Hatun. To be honest with you, I have to commend Hatun. I think she's come with an improved personality. No, seriously, I'm able to have a discussion with her, which is academic, yeah, and she's not shouting at me. Yeah, and I'm grateful for that as a Muslim, you know, I'm grateful. Thank you very much for that, seriously. Now, going back to Ibn Mas'ud and Ibn Abbas, yeah, so Ibn Mas'ud and Ibn Abbas, as I said to you before, the Mus'haf that they wrote on, this particular Mus'haf, it's not the Quran basically. It's their tafsir. They had, like for example, in Surah Al-Baqarah it says, حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. It says, guard your prayers in the middle prayer and stand for Allah upright. In one of the renditions, they put down a tafsir, a note, you know, like you do notes, as you're doing like حافظوا على الصلوات الخمس, which doesn't even, it's not even compliant with the Uthmani Mus'haf. Ibn Abbas.
Can you hold this one?
Sana manuscript, they say, La taqul bismillah between 8 and 9.
Don't interrupt.
On the text.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave it to that. Basically, the point I'm making here is that you can't keep referring to this as a Quran as if we as Muslims consider it a Quran. We as Muslims consider the Uthmani Mus'haf, which is in Sana'a now in Yemen, read in the 10 different stylistic traditions which have mass transmission, which go back to the Prophet Muhammad. We consider that as the Quran. Anything that's not what I've just described simply is not a Quran. So anything you find, if you excavate it from the ground, or if you find it in a library or whatever you want, and it's indifferent to what we've just said, to what we just said, we would not consider that the Quran. It's as simple as that. So whatever you do now, there's no historical remnant or artifact that can ever disprove our thesis, because basically we've understood what the Quran is. Nothing can basically block that. You have the position, and by the way, let me just quickly, 33 verse 4 and verse 6, there's no mention of father at all.
I said 6 and 4.
40 is 33, 40, he mentions father, yeah? 33, 6 and 4 doesn't. Anyways, the point is, the word ما كان محمد آباء doesn't, there's no difference in that. In all the Qira'at al-Ashr, there's no difference in that. The difference in that verse is with the word khatim and khatam. There's no difference in the word aba. So that was a false thing you said there. Maybe because you don't know about it, but let me teach you now. It's basically, there's no difference in the word aba within the 10 qira'at, all of them say Aba, which basically means the father of any of you men. Anyways, all of the qira'at agree on that.
You say Abba, not Abba.
No, sorry. The verse in question, ما كان محمد آباء أحد من رجالكم ولكن.
فاكهة أبا، أبا مو أبا.
Anyways,
which ayah which surah? ما كان محمد أبا
33:40. Anyways, Abba is something else. Abba is something else. Okay, that's Surah Al-Abasa, chapter 80 of
You've
the
got 10
Quran.
seconds. Yeah?
Anyways, the point is, you haven't been able to prove your thesis. Give me something which shows that there's a contradiction within the qira'at. That's now we're talking. Okay, that's the Quranic challenge.
Time.
Okay. I am saddened that you failed to make a point on Surah 33 verse 66 and 40. Let me read it for you again. You can check it from your Quran. The Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves. And his wives are
Their mothers.
their mother's blood relationship. So it goes on.
It doesn't
And
say
then
blood
it
relations,
says
it's the mother, that's it.
blood relations.
It doesn't say that in the Quran. Oh, وأزواجه أمهاتكم.
It does.
No,
It
no,
does say that.
That's a
It does say that. It's not in the parentheses. Then I am sorry, your
وأزواجه
Abdullah
أمهاتكم.
Yusuf Ali is just lying to the Muslim world for a
وأزواجه
long
أمهاتكم.
time. It looks like.
Even
It
Sahih
does-
International says
It
it.
does say
It
that.
just says وأزواجه أمهاتكم.
It does say that in the translation of the Yusuf
It doesn't
Ali.
say blood. It doesn't say blood.
It
In the
does
Quran.
say
Yeah.
that
No, in the Quran.
in the
Yeah.
translation of
But
the
I'm not-
Yusuf
I
Ali,
don't care what
and
translation.
it is not in the parentheses.
وأزواجه
Why should I
أمهاتكم.
trust your translation
Wait a minute,
versus
go on.
Yusuf
No
Ali's
problem. Okay,
translation?
you have it.
So,
Yeah.
Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran considered after their own selves is, and he is a father of them. Okay? So, when you compare that with the surah, verse 40, when you compare that with Surah 40, you see the contradiction of that spiritual father or
There's no father
grandfather.
in chapter 4, verse 4 or 4:6. There's no father.
Perfect.
It doesn't say father.
Because Ubay bin
does.
Ka'b's Quran say why you
There's no
haven't been
available-
open about it. That's my question. So this is Hafs Quran. Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran says that. So
What does
I
it say
would love
father?
you.
Even his one.
I would love you to explain that to me. And can you please make
this is
point
great to know.
again? Make point again. Who was the person made a decision that Surah Haft and Surah Al-Kal is not
Surah what,
in-
sorry?
Surah Haft, H-A-F-D, and
Oh.
Al-Kal is not in Muhammad's Quran. It's not the Quran which Muhammad give it to the people. I would love you to provide sources for that. And if you are going to discredit the Ibn Masud's and Ibn Ka'b's, then how are you going to trust the Quran they brought it to you, because they are in the chains? Where is my phone? I have
I've got
no
it
phone.
here. I've got it here.
Sorry. So I am waiting. I am waiting for you to respond to me. I am waiting for you to respond to me regarding the Surah 33.
Listen.
I am waiting you to respond to me if those two surahs edited or taken out, which is the correct version Muhammad had it. How come I can't have access to them? In the Hafs Quran I am reading now. Also, I would love you to tell me the dates when those Qurans, those 10 readings have been officialized. And can you tell me what happens from 6:32 to that time?
So, okay, I think I've answered your first question about Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abbas quite a few times.
No,
I
you
said-
haven't answered that.
Okay, let me answer it now then. Maybe I didn't answer it before. I agree with you that in the first instance, as can be found in Bukhari, that Ibn Mas'ud, he didn't consider Surah Al-Falaq, which is chapter 113, and Surah Al-Nas, which is chapter 114, as part of the Quran. And I also agree with you that Ubay ibn Ka'b in the first instance considered there to be a 115 and 116 of the Quran. Okay, which is dua al-qunut. It's a dua. Now, both of those people were mistaken, okay? How do we know they were mistaken? Because they themselves retracted their statements. They retracted it. When did they retract
Give me
it?
the source.
Okay, the source is when they came, you know there's a lajna. The lajna of, what do you call it, Uthman al-Affan, the committee of Uthman al-Affan. This was included them. And the final product, which is the Uthmanic manuscript, included their consent. So they consented to the final, basically the Uthmani manuscript, as the Quran that was revealed. So they realized that this was something that they got wrong, and they both took it back. It's as simple as that. As for the whole idea of you referring to a Ibn Mas'ud Quran, Ibn Abbas Quran or something like that, as such, they didn't refer to
I
themselves.
didn't say India, Pastor.
Okay, whatever. The point is, they themselves didn't recall the book that they had, the Quran. It's a mushaf. It's a book that they put their own notes on it, and those notes sometimes it had their own tafsir. They had their own tafsir, and the tafsir went against the Uthmani script completely. Like Hafizu ala salawat al khams. Like in chapter 33, verse number 40, where Allah subhanahu wa taala says, He says about the sun.
The blood relation.
No, hold on. Chapter 36, not 33, yeah?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
36 which verse?
36 verse 40. Can you show me? I need to jog my memory on this one.
Here.
وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا. Yeah? This is how it is in Hafs. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ. It's the verse in Arabic is that the sun runs through an orbit of its own axis, yeah? It runs its course. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا. In Ibn Abbas's reading, he says, الشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لَا مُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا. لَا مُسْتَقَرَ لَهَا. الشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي, the sun runs, and it doesn't have a place of setting. It doesn't have a place of setting. Obviously, scientifically, we know this is true, yeah? The sun continues to run, but it doesn't have a place of setting. But this doesn't fulfill the conditions of complete, basically, the three things. So here we have his tafsir of it, Ibn Abbas. الشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لَا مُسْتَقَرَ لَهَا. He understood it as meaning that the sun, although it continues to run in the sky, it doesn't actually set anywhere. Do you get me? So the sun is not setting anywhere. That's actually one of the interesting points of the Quran when you go about the science discussion, but that's something else. Going back now, what I'm trying to say is that this Mus'haf of Ibn Abbas and Ibn Mas'ud, these are Masahif which are not Qur'ans. They are not Qur'ans. They are just basically their thoughts. Sometimes they put their own thoughts there. Do you get me? So that's different.
Time.
Thank you very much.
You still have not responded to Surah 33 verse 6 and 40. I'm still waiting to respond to that question.
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry.
So, you still fail to give me the dates regarding when those 10 crowds have been officialized. And also, I guess you are still making a point that actually we don't know if Ibn Masud's or Ibn Ka'b's surahs were part of what Muhammad recited or not. Because in 939, people are using Ka'b's and Masud's Quran in 939. So
who's the people?
I gave you the names earlier. So if you can't remember them, I can give you them
There's
later.
a lot of people actually. You're right. There's a lot of people that mention it.
People are still using those things,
not
and
in
they are
Salah.
not in my Qurans I am reading now. So I would love you to kind of just provide some sources for me. Are those were in the Quran which Muhammad recited? And we know from the Islamic tradition that actually Muhammad failed to remember the certain verses, and then he praised people that people remind them. Regarding your side note regarding the Quran, we know science, we know Quran destroys science and science destroys the Quran. But as you said, that side note, we can come to that little bit later if you want. So, I would love us to go through those variations, and I would love you to kind of make a point. So, my first example is the Zakwan. First of all, can you just tell me about him?
Zakwan.
And how do you know this guy is reliable? And is this part of your 10 reading or not?
Yes.
After you give me your datings.
Yes.
How much time I
It
have?
is.
Over a minute.
So I've got over 1 minute.
text is the same.
So, I would love you to provide those informations for me. Also, can you just talk about the chain of the Zakwan and provide some information for me for that as well? After that, so that's for Zakwan. And then also, my next one is Al-Laid ibn Khalad. It's the same. I want some information about the person, and I want you to provide some details for me. How do you trust this person?
It's not part of the seven.
And also, I would love you to provide some information for me regarding the Hafs and how you are comfortable that Hafs is reliable, since we don't have any Hafs hadiths because people thought Hafs wasn't reliable. Yet Hafs is reliable for the Quran.
It's true.
So my question still stands. I would love you to provide dates for me for the 10 reading, and the reasons they've been done. And I would love you to provide detailed information for me that which surahs was the Muhammad recited.
Time.
Let her finish her
No,
sentence,
that's
my
fine.
friend.
That's fine.
So finish your sentence.
Don't worry, it's fine. Go
Okay,
for it.
right. What I was going to say is that, okay, you talked about the Qur'an. The Qur'an is one of the 10 readers, so we accept it. The second one you brought there is not, so we don't really accept it. In terms of Qur'an, it's not one of the 10 readers. An easy way to understand whether we as Muslims, an easy way to understand, right, what we consider to be the Qur'an as it relates to the Islamic discourse is as follows. And I've said this a few times, but I want to just make this very clear. The Uthmani Mus'haf, the Uthmani Qur'an, the book of the Uthman and his people that they read upon, this can facilitate more than one reading in certain passages. Okay? There's certain verses like Malik and Tathabatu Tabayyanu and all these things that we've just been through, that sometimes you can facilitate more than one reading. If it matches with that, if something, number one, matches, it's like a puzzle, it matches with the Uthmani Mus'haf, number one, and it matches with the Arabic language of the old people, number two, and it has a chain of narration which is mass narrated at each level, number three, then we can be confident in saying that that thing, whatever is being recited, was recited by the Prophet
What
Muhammad.
is the date for that?
And when we do that,
Doesn't have it.
okay, it's my turn now. Sorry. But when we do that,
Doesn't have it.
we come to a conclusion that there are 10 certain stylistic ways in which you could actually recite the Quran in prayer. There's only 10 ways in doing that. Those 10 ways, they're not contradictory, and for the most part, they are actually the same thing. For the most part, if you recite Surah Al-Fatiha in all 10 different styles, you will recite the same exact content with the exception of one word, which is Malik, which can be recited Malik, which means king, and Malik, which means owner. So here the point is this. It's not that we have X amount of Qur'ans. This is a false understanding. The correct academic understanding is that you have now this codified document, which is the Qur'an, which can facilitate, because of its lexical structure, more than one reading. If it doesn't, if for example Ibn Mas'ud's doesn't, it does not fit in with that. Yeah, it doesn't. You cannot correlate it because there are some phrases that are completely away from it. Ibn Abbas and the Arba'a Shawaz, they don't go in there. So therefore we say these are not the Qur'an. We don't consider them the Qur'an. We would never be allowed to pray behind someone who reads like that. If someone now reads Ibn Abbas's Qira'ah, we would say this is not the Qur'an and your prayer is invalid. Unless he obviously recites Surah Al-Fatiha the way he's going to recite. But Ibn Mas'ud's Mus'haf didn't even have Surah Al-Fatiha. Ibn Mas'ud's Mus'haf didn't even have Surah Al-Fatiha. But he knew.
Correction. We have reports from Ibn Mas'ud.
He didn't need it.
Time.
In Surah Al-Fatiha.
Yeah.
Time.
He did.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, there you go.
you have not given me date. Okay?
You haven't.
I am still.
Do you want to give a date? Let him.
I'm
He's
still-
better with dates.
No, I'm talking to you.
No, he's good.
You've got very good brain. I'm talking to you,
Very
sir.
good brain. Nobody did.
So, can you
I don't know the
please,
dates.
can you please give me the date
No,
when
no.
those 10 readings have been made official? They've been made official for long after
My legs are starting to get.
after 25
You know when
readings,
you're tall, like,
long
my lower back
after
starts to
50
get
readings, and long after 7 readings.
This is becoming a bit drawn out. Should we kind of last ones? Come on, last ones. Sorry, because it'll be too long for the viewers to watch. Even for me.
I'm not here for your views, sir.
No, not for your viewers. Look,
I'm
I'm
not
sorry.
here for your
I'm not. I don't mean to be rude. I just should we
Okay,
close-
one more.
Let
Yeah,
her finish her
okay.
3 minutes.
Sorry about
Sasha.
that.
So in that case, it's my turn, and then you finish it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you have not provided any information for me for the Surah 33 verse 6 and Surah 33 verse 14. You have not provided for me any date, which I asked you maybe like a couple of times. I would love to know when those 10 readings made official. Okay? Where are your 25 readings which was exist in 839? Where are those readings? You have not provided any information for me. Disagreements between Ubay bin Ka'b and disagreements between Masud,
Ibn Mas'ud.
and they are Ubay bin Ka'b is the chain of the house. You have not provided any information for me for the Zakwan. Why do you believe this guy is reliable? I asked you questions regarding that. Why do you believe Hafs is reliable when you don't put Hafs
Have you got the chain for
hadiths? Sorry, when you don't put the Hafs hadiths have narrations in the Hadith for the Quran. Yes, for the Hadith, yes, yet you believe Hafs is reliable. I would love you to back that up and then tell me with sources why you believe in the Hafs Quran today follow. And also you fail to provide any sources for me. How can you be so sure when Muhammad failed to have a good memory regarding what are the Quranic verses, chapters, yet in late decades you discredit the Masud's Quran, yet those Qurans and Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran was exist in 900s. Yet those things have been discredited. Yet you don't have the good memory for Muhammad and you don't know that. So my question still stands and you have not provided any evidence for my questions. Can you please how much time after?
30 seconds.
So can you please provide some sources for that? And also you talked about when someone decides the Quran differently. You don't have any complete Uthmanic Quran from the time of Uthman to go and check anything. So how can you compare that? And also you told me Al-Layt Khalat is not in the 10 Qurans, but I would love you to check that because what do you mean? Yeah.
Go on. Last one.
We talk about Khaled. Khaled. That's what she means. If she says Khaled, that's a different. Yeah, he's. We have Khalaf and Khaled.
The full name is there, brother.
Yeah, Khaled, but that's not what it says. It says Khalid, which is a different story. Anyways, there's no Khalid. Ibn Zakwan is. Let's see. Who you got?
Ibn Zakwan is the narrator of Ibn Amir.
Ibn Amir, and then who's his narrator?
So from Ibn Amir,
You got it from Hisham.
So it's your term. So it's like
And then
already
from
29
Hisham,
minutes.
you got it from Uthman.
Don't worry.
are we going upwards or downwards?
Upwards. You get that from inshallah. Whilst we talk about, so you asked about Ibn Zakwan. We'll get him particularly for you, the chain for him, because that is important if you want to be sure about it. The 10 qira'ats are mutawatir. So what we mean by that is all the qira'at al-ashar, or the 10 qira'ats, have multiple chains of narration from each side, from each level. Just quickly answering your question about 33.6 and 33.40. 33.6 says nothing about fathers. Yeah? It says nothing. The word father is not there.
Yeah, because it's in the sorry, it's your term. It's in Hafs Quran.
Yeah,
it's in
Hafs is not
Quran.
there.
It's not in Hafs Quran.
It's not in
So I'm
any of the
asking why.
Qur'ans. It's not in any of the Qur'ans.
Because it's Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran.
No, it's not in any of the Qur'ans. So here we have.
Where is it? Do you have it to compare?
I don't see it. I can't see
show
it.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When my time comes. Actually, this is your last one. Like
No, it's just my last one. But anyways, I know that it's not there. Yeah. But if it was, we just say it was something that goes back to the Prophet. If it wasn't in there, but it's not in there, so it's not. We can't use that as an evidence. That's one. Number two, 40. The word Aba, you said that the word father, it has theological implications. But there's no difference within the 10 qira'ahs in the word Aba. It doesn't exist. Okay, so you have to retract that now. Number three, so here the mas'ala, the issue is actually solved. In the beginning of this discussion, you said there's no problem with there being scriptural variation, and we're open about that. And we have in your Bible, we have like, you know what I'm saying, manuscriptural things, and you can go back to that. I'm saying there's an issue with that kind of variation, because that kind of variation is unaccounted for as it relates to going back to Jesus Christ. It doesn't go back to Jesus. I'm saying that there's a big difference between comparing variants, which are manuscript variances, which, I'm going to quote him, Bartman says that there's 400,000 of them. There's more variants than there are words in the Bible.
That Bartman says Jesus died on the cross.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Having said
That's a problem according to
No,
Islamic
hold on.
tradition.
And he said that 96 or 97% of the manuscripts that we have came after the 9th century, which is 2 centuries after Prophet Muhammad. This is a problem because here you have manuscripts that are introduced by human beings. What you're giving us is stylistic variants, which are all approved by Prophet Muhammad, and which all have a chain back to him, and which all go back to Allah. So what's the problem?
Got 10 seconds, yeah?
So I actually challenge you here to. Actually, it's finished now. I don't see how you can compare the two things. I really don't. But anyways, it's been nice talking to you this time around.
Can you come back next week?